Alright, hello everyone, my name is Disc, and in this video we have a City of Threads 15, pretty nice upgrade from a month ago on my channel, and I wanted to get right into this video to give more of a focus on the mechanics of discipline rather than like miscellaneous synergies or what have you. This dungeon is quite a bit different than most, especially at a higher level, when it comes to how we play our spells. And we have to play them in a little bit more of a creative manner. So typically what I mean is like we do a pet and a rift, then a rift, then a pet and a rift, and then a rift. So it's a little bit different here, and it's kind of taken me a minute to learn. But I think I have it down pat, and I wanted to kind of highlight that here. And then, yeah, so with these beetles, that is the only attack that really matters in these pulls. That is why that's the only attack I'm tracking on his nameplate. So we really have to time our spells. We need something played every single time the bees go out, in addition to personal defensives. So let's see. A pet and a rift is the preferred combo. Rift and Vampiric Embrace, Rift and Rapture, those all work. And with improved fade cooldown, we can fade every time. So let's see how this next one goes. So I like getting my Dispel before my damage window. So here it goes. Queued in Fade. This is Pet, Rift, and Vampiric Embrace. And when it comes to those Dispels, I try and give it a second or two before you Dispel, just to give others a moment to react. And not a bad idea in these areas to start practicing pinging your Dispel. So even though there's not two, I feel like kind of warming up that keybind is really helpful for boss. And we have some really nice technique on boss 1 here. So the boss will take a Mind Soothe, and you can walk in together. So the idea is, instead of the tank maybe attacking them from ranged and everyone getting pulled in and hurt, if you just walk in together, you can dodge that first attack, and we're all safe. Okay, on open of this pull, there is nothing to heal, but there is quite a bit of damage, quite a bit of time before the first attack. So I throw a full rotation. Pet and Rift. Pinging the first Dispel. Paints up on that first attack. And here's the first Indoctrination. This is the only timer I'm tracking with Bigwigs. The other mechanics I've kind of learned at this point by feel. So after a move is always a tank slam. We see that with the targeted cast weak aura. That is an opportunity for pain subs. You kind of always want to shield them if you can. The best thing you can do is coordinate that with your team. And this is where I start falling into my more predictable rotation. Also, after every Dispel is a tank slam too, so you kind of just have to know that as a cadence. But when it comes to these Dispels, I Dispel one quickly, and then I'm always going to have a Harsh Discipline procced. I give a defensive penance into the second Dispel, which also pulls from my Wheel and Woe, which then I give to the tank. So watch here. Dispel one, defensive penance into the other. Okay, well that wasn't the best example. Let's watch the next one. And then when it comes to these Indoctrinations, it's pretty standard. We either do a pet and a rift if we have it, or just a rift if we don't. And it's kind of like a back and forth. Shielded the tank. So that one was a Wheel and Woe Rapture. You can always expect a tank hit after a move and after Dispels. Okay, so let's see if I get this one. Ping, Dispel. Oh, and I went for some Raptures. Okay, maybe the next one's a good example. And we have Paradox here, which is amazing. And whenever you can, with your pet and or rift window, if you can play your Radiance before the move, it is a little bit more secure. Okay, so let's see if I get this next one. I bank a Harsh Discipline proc, ping my first Dispel, and then Defensive Penance into the second person, then Wheel and Woe shield on the tank. Ooh. So good shield, but it looks like you actually got hit by the ball there. So the first time that I actually got my rotation, the shield went to waste from ball. But arguably, it's still what saved him, so. Another shield there. Ping first. Shielded the tank. Looks like I was actually hoping he would die before that attack. But it's all good. Permitting out of combat.
Not even worthy of the fifth strain. Ansarek has eyes everywhere. You'll need to blind them to make them see.
And always best as a healer to have a plan for the next attack. So that kind of does demand you know the dungeons. But looking at these spells here, knowing that the first mechanic here involves dancing, Pet, Rift, and Vampiric Embrace. So as a comparison, you know, if I had Barrier, Barrier is not good on the first attack because you can't stand in it. Okay, then this one is a Rapture. 2 Raptures on those that are Atoned, Radiance, and Rapture the other 2. And I think one of the best practices, and a half Rift here, I think one of the best practices with Rapture is not use all of them in one go. So I think a lot of times I might just play one and then sit on the rest. Other times, like that example, I played a handful, then saved 2. Okay, so this was a couple of Raptures into a Pet and a Rift window. Playing Fade every time we're hit. And then I wanted to talk about it in this video. That wasn't the best example, but if you've been playing Discipline for at least a couple of weeks now, you've probably realized, or if you haven't, I hope this means something to you. But so we have to get to our second penance, so Pet, Death, Rift, Penance, Smite, 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 Penance. So after that second penance, even though the death is available, it's kind of a bait to hit that death. The Rift is still active and you have time for one more Void Blast. So we always want to try and weave in that extra blast. Okay, things got really close to getting out of control there. That was my health potion. I think that was one of the last buttons in our spellbook that I really gave effort to trying to maximize. It is very important to have a comfortable keybind for that and start getting used to playing it. That was a Rift and Rapture. And here goes just a Rift. And the reason, at least here, the reason it was just a Rift is the pull had no health left. So playing a Mindbender would not have been good. We would not have gotten the CDR. Okay, so this is our time to plan our next play. So I see Vampiric Embrace. I see Fade. Pet and Rift. Ooh. Okay, so I think it's probably worth tying into your UI. But getting hit by the webs is really only a major problem if the person dies. So, like that example where I was picked, the only thing that saved me, and by a sliver of a health bar, was that I quickly reacted with heals on myself. So that goes for if your team is picked. That is kind of your job to quickly react. You can't just sit there and like act confused, which is what the Shaman did. So if you replay that, so I think if you're the healer, definitely your job. If you are a Shaman, if you are an Aug, if you're a Paladin, and you see that happen to your team, you have got to heal them instantly or they're going to die. Okay, so let's see. We have Raptures with a Paints Up on cooldown. I might play that first. And I think I favor Pet and Rift first. So 9 times out of 10, the Pet and Rift should take Prio. Then I better go into Rapture on the next one. Okay, so I believe I actually save Rapture then. Yeah, save Rapture, refresh my palm out of combat. So when it comes to palm, only playing it out of combat is the way to go. And generally when exiting combat, there's a stack left over somewhere. So right there, I think it was a 3 stack, and I comboed it to an 8. But it's a 30-second refresh on the timer every time it jumps. So in theory, it can last 5 minutes. At least it's going to assist with every pull. It's not going to, expire in one pull, generally. So I think it's a nice little spell. It doesn't heal too much, but it's at least 1 full health bar worth, which I think is kind of nice. Okay, so in these pulls, I have them color-coded differently. I have the darker red mob here as a different guy than the guy that jumps. This is an example where the focus target doesn't need to be the person with the most health. It's much better to be on the person who is most threatening, which is the guy that's jumping around. Okay, so here is a barrier round. I think the best thing you can do with barrier, in most cases and especially here, is if you can have it down before the first tick of damage. I think the most threatening part of most attacks is the upfront component. So covering that is very important. Like for example, you don't want to play it after the first tick of damage. You want to play it before. Force collapse on the rift there just to get the healing value. Refresh palm out of combat. Not going to do that again. And this is another area where I think there's a major argument for something like Palm. So we have to FAP, we have no choice. There is roleplay with the boss spawn. We can charge up here. So at best, we can have 2 10 stacks of Palm, and we can have a double stack of Radiance, of Harsh Discipline, which is what we want. And then on pull here, what I really like doing to cover the first round of bleeds is I Rapture, which delays my Pet and Rift. You really want to play a Pet and Rift preceding the ice attack. And when you delay the Pet and Rift, it ensures everyone's healed before the ice attack. Yeah, the best defense with that ice attack is having a full health bar. Okay, so I Raptured. Here goes the Pet and Rift, quite a bit delayed. Here comes the ice attack. And the play here is Shaman goes first. Okay, I still dispelled myself just to be safe. I'm not sure what happened there. But I definitely used my Desperate Prayer and Fade. And in this phase where they jump around the lines, it is just an opportunity to grab some damage. So that was a Rift on its own, just Void Blasting as much as I can, making sure I hit my half rotation securely. Just making sure I get 2 penance mainly. And then here with the Rhyme Dagger, not too much to it, but if you're really trying to min-max it, you want to cast the pet after the first tick, and you want to make sure you pre-cast your Radiance after the second. 5 Torments and we're all topped. And here comes the other damage grab phase, playing Mind Blast literally as soon as it comes available, and just smite as much as I can into that Schism. Prioing 2 penance, we got the 2. And then here we're back to Rapture. So I Radiance into Rapture for the Mastery. This covers the up front hits of all the bleeds, allowing me to kind of delay my Pet and Rift, which will just make sure that we are all topped up. And one Rapture left over for myself, and I believe this is still the Shaman's round here. We'll go Shaman, and back to just a damage phase. Playing Rift ASAP, smiting as many times as I can, high prio that second penance for the Rift. Okay, and approaching the Rime Dagger, I really love giving our one shield to myself, just as an extra layer of defense. I do that a lot. We have a lot of really good examples of that in here, to be honest. And I played my Pet Death Rift Penance right after the first tick of damage. And let's see if I get my precast on top of the second one. Yep, so precast Radiance on top of the second one. And 5 Torments. Okay, we're back to our damage phase. Just a Rift. And now we are approaching our Rapture phase. Radiance into Rapture for the Mastery. Also not a bad idea. You might have seen on the Rime Daggers and here too, I'm making sure I play Flash Heal to kind of keep my DR rolling. And here we have a little bit of a spooky ooky moment on me. So I paints up myself, Desperate Prayer, Fade, Health Potion, and all to get the Mass Dispel. And I think I even had 2 Lay on Hands from the Paladins. We were talking about it in Discord. But that boss is pretty standard when it comes to the layout of our spells. There shouldn't be guesswork in how we're playing our spells there, at least in higher level keys. Its pattern matches our pattern perfectly. Okay, and these pulls are very, very sensitive. We have to pump. And these being such big pulls are great times for utility play. So noticing I have a UI element giving an icon on my frame anytime I'm selected with something if Shadow Meld is up. So it's a really great opportunity to protect your own health with a Shadow Meld. Also a really good opportunity to play Fear. So noticing I have a couple important casts loaded with a Trumpet Sound. Also my Fear icon is glowing. I think it's the next pull where I get better utility. Yeah, here I opened with a full rotation, Pet and Rift, and then I played my Rift as soon as it was available. And now with all of my Pain Sups on cooldown, getting a Rapture out, the CDR for Pain Sup is affected by those shields. And here goes my second full rotation, a couple of deaths on the front end. Worked in my Radiance early for safety. 1 extra Void Blast in there after the second penance. Let's see. Just got my Mind Blast back. Yep, and play it. So I think one of the best things you can do as you're advancing in higher level keys is focusing on the uptime of your Rift. And here is a little bit of a defensive phase, just waiting for my Pet and Rift to come back up together. So we have a barrier laid down. There was my Fear, and you might have to replay it, but I was less than 100% health. I saw that I was targeted with a single target attack, and I also used my Shadow Meld there, just playing a little extra defensively just until I got to my output window. Six Torments. This is an example where I can tell I'm being targeted. It's not a weak aura, it's just a basic function of Grid 2. I highlight with a small red line around myself when I'm being cast on with something minor. And noticing that I'm being cast on here, I'm giving some extra attention to myself. Yeah. Didn't love playing my shield wall there, but it is what it is. Okay, and then this next pull is something to take deep breaths on. It's a chain into the mini-boss. We have Shaman dispelling both first rounds. The best defense you can have to your team is have your Pet Death Rift Penance Rapture. I'm sorry, Pet Death Rift Penance Radiance all out before the dance. Okay, looks like on this one I missed the Radiance element. And then I was calling for Spatial Paradox on third, thinking we might have a third, but we don't. Let's see how I get this next one. So Pet in Rift was first. On the second one, we buffer with Rapture, and it is just a Rift. And a couple extra Raptures left over. And pretty good. So if you don't have a way to tell if your AUG gives you Spatial Paradox, it is something you need to add to your UI, maybe just a little graphic or something, but it is crack for a Disc Priest. It really ensures, it's a cooldown that if you know how to use it right, it gives you, how do I say it? It gives you, what I'm saying. You're not going to miss your rotation. You're not going to miss any CDR. You're not going to miss any spells. You're not going to miss your Radiance. It is an amazing spell to use as a Disc Priest, so you do got to track it. Okay, so on these pulls, we have one attack we're tracking. It's on the big one's nameplate. I opened there with just a round of atonements, kind of waiting for the attack, and then queue in Pet and Rift. And there is my graphic for Spatial Paradox. I think it's a 2-minute spell. This guy plays it quite a bit. Okay, and here is the next AoE round. We're doing just a Rift. Getting my Divine Star on the little ones. I think I cast another Rift here just to kind of get a damage grab. Yep, casting Rift as soon as it's available. I believe I work in a Divine Star here too. No, I hold. That's fine. Okay, so I find my focus early, the big one. I spend this time ramping. So we're giving nice long atonements to party. Working in a shield, working in a flash heal. Here goes Pet and Rift. Plus Fade. Switching targets to preserve my dots. Switching targets to find executes. And I should send one more Rift here. Yeah. So I send the Rift quite early, preceding this damage. And that's to favor its CDR and just a full damage grab. Okay, 5 stack of Palm. Want to try and get that to a 10 before we start. And this boss opens pretty standard. Full rotation, half rotation, but then it gets a little wonky. So paying attention to his energy on his nameplate. We want to play Pet and Rift here ASAP. Always trying to get our Radiance off before the knockback. And then this is also a case in higher keys. We need our heals to be more potent. So instead of just full sending our heals, we kind of have to wait to use them at more opportune times. So like in that example, if you replay it, even though I had my penance up, I kind of waited for the knockback to make sure the heal was most effective. Okay, so we're approaching the first Dark Blast, or whatever it's called. I have told party I'm going to fully handle it. So I preemptively lay barrier. This is Pet Rift, Desperate Prayer, and Vampiric Embrace. And the instruction here is they're going to full send their Zephyr and AG next. And in hindsight, when I watched this back, this was a Rapture. I don't know if that was necessary. But this is where our spell layout gets a little wonky. So I play the Rift here, and that's to recover from that first Vicious Darkness. And then right here I play the Pet. So generally you don't want to play the Pet without the Rift. But in this case, we really just need the value, even though it's not going to be like our perfect Pet window. We still get 5 Torments. Really all we did was sacrifice the 1 Torment from the Void Blast. But we had to play the Pet that early in order to have him back in time. So anyway, that was a Rift on its own, just to cover that Vicious Darkness. Pet just came available, and here comes the next phase. So this is Zephyr AG. We just have to get our Pet and Rift out ahead of time. I paints up myself for an extra layer of defense. Always making sure to get that 1 extra Void Blast after the second penance. Okay, Rift is out on this one, and barely got that Radiance off before the knockback. And then here goes the off-sync Mindbender. So we really just need the value, even though we're going to be losing the Torment from the Mind Blast. Well, actually in this one, so it's a little different. We do get the Torment from Mind Blast, but we are losing some of the value of Schism by casting the Mind Blast midway. But really the goal there with casting a little bit of a wonky Mindbender is just to have it back in time. If we delay any, we're going to be cutting it a little tight. Okay, then right here I'm sending another full rotation, Pet and Rift. And I believe I should have totally helped the Pet. So sending the Rift there would have been better. Looking at its cooldown is 40 seconds away. That is not what you want. And then I always kind of try and make the call as the healer which one here to do first. And without barrier just yet. Actually, we could have gone for the other one first. Arguably maybe should have, because we're going to have PI too. But anyway, we take this guy first. I'm opening with a Rapture Dump to cover the first attack. That is all we're tracking on his nameplate. And that Rapture Dump, not only for the heals, it was to help the cooldown of our paint set. And because I didn't have Pet yet. Okay, so we have an Atonement ramp. Here goes the Pet and Rift. And important to note, our Pet Rift window is like 15 seconds. The Rift collapses in about 11. So if the enemy's attack is 8 seconds away, that's in perfect time. You always want to try and time the collapse after a group-wide hit like that. But nothing too much goes on here. I wanted to start talking about the next mini-boss. I think it is pretty hard and one of the weirdest play of spells to get it right. I think I could have even done a little bit better, arguably. Good collapse there. But it's most unconventional with our spells. If anyone does it differently, let me know, but this is kind of what I found out how to do. But we have the bees here to start. It is a little bit of a bait, I think, to play your Pet and Rift. There's an overlap in this fight, and that's what we need to kind of prepare for. So for just those bees, I did a Rift. The collapse happened after the hit, so we're all covered. And then here is a second just Rift. So this is where it's a little wonky. I'm holding on to the Pet the entire time. And here comes the bad overlap. So I barrier late, mainly wanting to cover the hit, but then we have ticking damage immediately to follow. And this is our full send. So Pet, Rift, Vampiric Embrace, Desperate Prayer, and Paints Up. And Fade, probably, to be honest. And then this is where I wish I'd done it a little bit better. I think what I should have done is Paints Up myself one more time. So I went into Rapture, but see how close the team got there to dying? I should have Paints Up to myself, which would have given me freedom to prioritize those Rapture shields on the others. I think that would have been a little bit better of a play. But thankfully, we did well. this dungeon, more than any, I think, benefits from your DPS having group assist spells. So Zephyr, AG, the Paladins, bring sacks, they bring wogs, they bring freedoms. So it makes a real big difference, and this key I think is the most sensitive for healers. But this fight, just like the others, has a very specific ask of us. So I wait until the splice begins, and then I send a pet and a rift, queuing in my fade on myself. And this boss, more than any, is a really good opportunity to use your shield as a personal defensive before those hits. And that's what I did there. And I think I try and do it on every single hit, to be honest. Okay, so this is just my rift phase, starting right after the splice. Personal shield. And the collapse recovers all. So now we just rinse and repeat. So looking at the Mind Blast here, I play it immediately. So this is the tank damage phase. You don't really need to do anything here if your tank is doing it right. I'm sending the rift. It does help with his coverage, but it's more of just a damage grab. And here comes the next splice. This is a pet, rift, vampiric embrace, personal shield before the hit, 2 penance into the rift, collapse recovering it all, and 5 torments. And on this one, the modifier is Rapture. So I Radiance into a Rapture, making sure I cast a Flash Heal for the damage reduction. And here goes Rapture and the Rift. Timing my penance after the attack. We have a couple of shields left over. So here goes the tank damage phase, playing the Rift as soon as it comes available. And kind of reading between the lines here, I think the better play, it's a new strat for me too, is healer stands in the middle. That way you don't have to move as much. Makes it a lot easier. Okay, so the plan for the next one, we're in Discord, so I give them barrier. I Desperate Prayer and Paints up myself. And this is a full rotation, Pet and Rift. I did not bother with a personal shield that time because I had so many other defensives rolling. 5 torments. And this is going to be just a rift, so arguably a little bit weaker. Fade. Paints up myself a little bit delayed. And you might need to play that one back by a couple seconds if you want to see what I mean by delayed paints up. You really want it to cover part of the ticking damage, and then also still be there for the slam. So yeah, if you delay it slightly, you'll cover both. Okay, we had our first death, rip, just a slight miscoordination there. That was a half rotation for the damage grab. And back to a Rapture as a modifier here. Flash Heal very last for the damage reduction. Pet, death, Rift, Penance, death. So I do prefer a Pet, death, Rift, Penance combo. But in a case like this, where our job is to be more of a healer than anything, I needed the healing component from the Rift out before that second death. So I sent that out and staggered my deaths. That was a Desperate Prayer very last second because we're running a little bit light here. And I throw a Pet and Rift here just at the very end, forcing the collapse for the win. So I think this is a pretty good queue overall. 424,000 per second, really good number. You do want to aim for over 400, especially if you have an AUG. But this key, more than any, I think puts more demand on the healer. So it's really specific for us as discipline. Not too sure how a shaman handles it, but depending on where you are at in your journey as a disc priest, there really isn't any guesswork to when we time our spells. I think the art of it is finding, the best lay of spells because, in PvE, these things are on timers. and so are our cooldowns. So like finding the best play of spells to kind of merge those together so that they line up and kind of do what you want when you want, I think is the name of the game. And this place is pretty wonky. But if anyone has other ways that you do it, please let me know. This is just kind of what I've come up with for mainly the mini boss was the weirdest one for me. And then the coagulation boss, whatever his name is. Those are two that I think are a little bit weird for us. And this is kind of just what I think is the best way to do it for now. But anyway, please check out my Metafy if you're interested in a 1-on-1 private lesson. Been getting a lot done over there. Please also join the channel as a member if you'd like any of these UI elements. And until next time, Disc.